Hi guys. I just wanted to share some of the things that we've been looking at regarding limb dominance and limb preference in ice hockey players because I think that it can provide a lot of value for a lot of practitioners out there. And I'll go through what we did. Pretty much with a team of NCAA Division One men's ice hockey athletes, we asked them what's their preference for various tasks performed on the ice. One of them is their stick side. So do you use a left-handed or right-handed stick? One leg stop preference, where we asked them if you were sprinting at full speed and had to pick one leg to stop with, which one would you choose? Push off leg, which was if you were going to sprint at full speed from a dead stop, which leg would you push off with first? Quick turn direction, if you were sprinting at full speed on the ice and needed to make a turn as quickly as possible, which way would you turn? And then if you were to pick a leg to balance with on the ice for as long as possible, which one would you choose? And the first thing that we notice, left is in yellow, right is in green, and that's kind of reflected throughout this entire thing. But there's a lot of variability here within positions, across positions, within each person. And the only thing that I want to get across here is that limb preference is task specific. So if you're going to make training alterations based on one question that you ask, or especially a question that's unrelated to any task that the athlete actually performs, such as their stick side or their which ball they prefer to kick a ball with, that may not be a great guide for all of your training prescriptions. So I would consider asking questions that are relevant to the tasks that are specific to what the athletes need to do in order to understand how they prefer to do things on the ice, which may give you insights into why they're presenting with certain issues or what they need to work on more so than other things. The second thing that we did is throughout the season, we had the athletes jump on dual force plates. They did counter movement jumps with their hands on their hips, bilateral jumps. And within these jumps, we were able to get asymmetry values for various metrics. The first is braking force, second, or average braking force. The second is average braking RFD, or rate of force development. The third is average propulsive force. And here are the total jumps that the guys did throughout the season. It was 2 to 3 jumps per session. So everyone has, the only guys that don't have upwards of 10 jumps are because they ended up getting a little bit banged up. But there are 3 to 5 sessions in here, or 3 to 10 sessions pretty much of 2 to 3 jumps. And what we notice is that the first thing that we notice is that some of the profiles that guys present with according to each metric, if you're looking across metrics, are not synchronous. For example, this guy Willy Wonka here, he's got a decent asymmetry, 8.6% favoring his right, with according to left right average braking force, but he's got a slight asymmetry going the other way, probably not clinically significant, and I don't even know if this is clinically significant, going in his left direction for RFD. Similarly, you see a couple of other guys here, minus 4.7 in one direction, 4.4 in the other, according to the metric. So that's another thing that I want to point out is that depending on there are two things. Depending on the metric that you're looking at, number one, the threshold value that would determine whether or not a true asymmetry exists needs to be investigated. You can't just pick a 10% difference and that's the same according to all metrics. And the second is to understand that the profile may not be the same depending on the metric. And actually, another thing is that these profiles oftentimes don't reflect limb preferences. An example is this Willy Wonka guy. He has a left-handed stick. He prefers to do most things on his left limb on the ice, yet he presents with a left-right average braking force asymmetry favoring his right limb when he performs counter movement jumps. The relevance of this, I don't know. The clinical significance of this, I don't know. But I do know that it's worth investigating further. And that one should not assume based on an asymmetry value that they see that a training prescription should go in a certain way without investigating a little bit further, perhaps. So within these jumps, what we also did is we segregated the jumps out into, so I just picked a number, 5% asymmetry. I considered clinically significant. I don't know if it is or not. I just picked a number, and we counted the number of jumps within the jumps that the guys had where they exhibited dominance in either direction. So, for example, this guy, he had 18 total jumps. 0 of them were left dominant or had a greater than 5% asymmetry favoring the left in his average braking force. And 13 of his jumps, he exhibited right dominance according to average braking force. So he had a greater than 5% asymmetry favoring his right limb. 5 of his jumps, according to average braking force, there was no limb dominance present. In other words, his asymmetry value was between 5 and minus 5%. So what we quickly notice here again is that there's a lot of variability here. And well, specific to average braking force, it seems pretty consistent in that if guys do present with an asymmetry, most guys, for example, this guy, 17 to 0, 10 to 0, 4 to 0, 8 to 0, 13 to 0, it's pretty consistent. Some guys it's not. 3 favoring his left, 4 favoring his right, 21 no favoring, 3, 4, 17. So for the most part, it's pretty consistent. But if we move on, again, looking at the direction of asymmetry now, when we're looking in the consistency of that direction, we're looking at braking RFD, left dominance here, braking RFD, right dominance, braking RFD, no dominance. He exhibits right dominance according to average braking RFD far more than his left, and that's reflected in his average braking force profile here. But another guy, for example, Bigfoot, he's got 8 left dominant profiles according to average braking force metric, 10 no dominance. Whereas when you get into the average braking RFD, he's got 3 left dominant jumps, 3 right dominant jumps, and 12 no dominance jumps. And you can see this kind of across the board as well. This guy, Ace, oh man, that should say Ace Ventura, messed up. So 0, 2, but we have 6 and 6 according to braking RFD. So number one, depending on the metric that you're looking at, like we spoke about before, the profiles can be drastically different and the consistency of those profiles can be drastically different. So if you are making decisions based on asymmetry values, and it would be important to assess them semi-consistently, because if you're just doing one jump a month and making training decisions based on that jump or a set of jumps, it may not be an accurate reflection of whether or not that asymmetry actually exists and the direction of that asymmetry. And that's all I'm going to go through in this video. I have another one where I can go through an overview of the results, and I'll just show this here so you can look at it. You know what? Maybe I'll just keep going. So what we did is we segregated guys by stick side, and we looked at what percentage of those guys had an average asymmetry value that favored their left versus their right. So if we're looking here, 22.2% of the players that use a left-handed stick preferred to make a one-leg stop with their left leg on the ice, and 77.8% preferred their right. And I'm not so concentrated on these values, but more so the differences between the left and right values. So 1/3 versus 2/3, that's not a very confident profile where I know that if a guy has a left-handed stick, he's going to prefer to push off with his right leg. 1/3 of the guys don't. And vice versa, or here with the one leg balance, it's nearly a 50-50 split with left-handers. So I don't know if I'm doing training that's related to balance or the qualities that promote single leg balance on the ice. it may be relevant to take a deeper dive and understand what's going on from a preference perspective, to figure out whether or not I should be working on more on one limb or the other, or how I should be working on each limb. Now, in the chart down here, same thing, guys split up by stick side, and this time we're looking at the counter movement jump metrics. For example, here, 18 guys, again, are left-handed, relating to the stick. 11.1% of the left-handed players exhibited breaking force asymmetry favoring the left limb, whereas 16.7% of the players exhibited breaking force asymmetry favoring the right limb. 72.2% on average throughout the season did not exhibit a average breaking force asymmetry. And again, the profiles slightly differ. In this one, more players presented with a right breaking force asymmetry. When we do breaking RFD, more players presented with a left than the right. In propulsive force, and this speaks to the notion that each metric and its thresholds should be analyzed independently, and appropriate thresholds should be determined for each metric. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Maybe people just don't have propulsive force asymmetries that are relevant, but also not a lot of guys presented with propulsive force asymmetries, whereas the breaking force metrics, far more guys presented with an asymmetry. And again, the definition of asymmetry I'm using is a difference between limbs that's greater than 5% in either direction. So there's just a couple things to consider when we're talking about asymmetries and limb dominance. And I hope the video is helpful, and thanks for watching.